The House That Waited. Chapter 1. The Door That Knew My Name. I arrived at dusk because I did not want to see the house in full daylight. Greywater House sits at the end of a gravel road that closes like a throat. The trees lean toward the roof. Their branches look like hands that are almost kind. I parked with the engine still running. The house watched me through its upstairs windows. I could feel it do that. Old glass makes a sound you do not hear exactly. It presses on your ears like a hand under water. My grandmother left the house to me. She left a letter in the key box, 4 lines only. Do not speak your own name on the threshold. Do not knock 3 times. If the stairs ask a question, answer before the 12th step. Do not sleep in the south room. The brass key was heavy in my palm. The knob turned smooth, as if the house had been practicing. When the door opened, the air that came out smelled like old books and metal, the kind of metal that has been in a mouth. Coins, keys, teeth. I stood on the threshold and did not speak. I said nothing to the dark hallway and nothing to the tall clock with the cracked face. I stepped in, and the boards under my shoes gave a soft breath. The door closed behind me with a careful click. It sounded like a clerk finishing a neat signature. The hallway ran straight and then turned left toward the kitchen. Rooms opened to either side. The air felt layered, warm near the ceiling, cool near the floor. Dust floated in slow sheets, as if each room had its own weather. A low bell chimed from the back of the house. Not a doorbell. A bell on a string somewhere in a draft. It rang once. It paused. It rang a second time. I counted the rings as if that would help. I remembered the letter. Do not knock 3 times. It did not mention bells. I told myself that was different. The voice in my head that keeps people alive for a living said that is not different. I told that voice to sit down and take notes. On the hall table was a book bound in black calf. A leather strap kept it closed. A paper tag hung from the strap. Inventory of keys. I brushed the dust from the cover and felt a little spark move through my thumb. I pulled my hand back, and the spark stayed right there in the skin, buzzing like a fly that refuses to leave the window. The clock at the far end ticked once. It did not tick again. The second hand trembled between marks like a person choosing a lie. I called out without saying my name. I said hello to the house. It felt dangerous to be polite. It felt more dangerous not to be. I carried my bag to the kitchen, because kitchens are the safest rooms in houses. There was a kettle. There was a sink with a cracked white apron. There was a coil of twine on a nail by the door, tied with 3 simple knots that were not simple. There were 3 glasses turned upside down on the counter, as if 3 people lived here and did not want to explain themselves. I turned the tap. The water came brown and then clear. I let the kettle fill. I let the room listen to me doing small things. Small things are a flag that says I am not prey. The bell rang again. 3rd time, not a knock, I told myself. It is a bell. The part of me that reads rules said stop counting. I stopped counting. I did not stop hearing. I walked back to the hallway with the black book under my arm. I passed the south room and did not look inside. The letter said, do not sleep there. It did not say, do not look. I respected the silence in that sentence. The stairs rose on the right. Not steep, not kind. Their treads had a faint dip where many feet had stood, and then hesitated. There was a polished patch on the banister at shoulder height. You do not get a shine like that from love alone. You get it from fear and habit, and the way a hand must hold something when it tells itself to keep going. At the bottom of the stairs, someone had carved 12 small lines into the riser notches. Each notch had a pencil number over it, 1 to 12. The 13th place was clean. The wood there looked new and soft, as if the house had been saving it. The kettle clicked in the kitchen. The sound ran down the hall as if it was glad to be out. I opened the black book on the hall table. The first page was a map of the house, sketched in neat ink, rooms numbered, arrows for drafts, a dotted line for the path that people forget they walk in the night. The next pages were entries in a hand, almost like my grandmother's, but not quite. Key pantry. Tag reads, a promise not kept. Turned on a Thursday during rain. Result, voices in the stovepipe. Resolution, turned back at once. Left on the nail. Key. Closet under stairs. Tag reads 5 steps to go. Turned at noon. Result, question, from the 12th tread. Answer given. It took breath but left blood. Resolution, do not use again. My throat went dry. I looked at the carved notches at the bottom step. I looked back at the words 5 steps to go. The house felt very awake. The last entry on the page was short and hard. Key, south room window. Tag reads a winter that came back. Do not turn. I closed the book, and the leather strap fell over it, like a sleeping hand. I took my tea to the kitchen. I held it under my nose and counted breaths. I put my bag against the wall where I could kick it if I needed to move fast. I said my name to myself in my head and watched the doorway as if the house could read lips. The bell did not ring again. The clock did not tick. The light went out of the windows like someone drawing down a shade. When real dark came, it came all at once. I slept in the chair with one shoe on. I kept my hand on the black book because I did not want the house to move it while I was asleep. I dreamed there were teeth under the door. When I woke, I could still hear them click once. A polite little sound. The sound a clerk makes with a pen when a debt has just been written down. I told the house I had read the rules. I told it I would not speak my name on the threshold. I told it I would not knock 3 times. I told it I would answer before the 12th step. I told it I would not sleep in the south room. The house said nothing. The quiet felt like an agreement written in a language I could not read yet. I went to the doorway and looked at the gravel road. Fog had come up from the creek. It lay close to the ground, and it moved like breath. There were no tracks in the gravel, except mine. The night had already licked them almost smooth. Behind me, in the hallway, the tall clock ticked once. A small sound, enough to turn my head, enough to say that the house had learned my shape and was ready to begin. Chapter 2. The Inventory of Keys. Morning came with a dull light that felt second-hand. The kitchen window looked at a yard of black leaves and a line of old washing poles. I ate dry toast because dry food makes less noise. I carried the black book to the hall and pulled a chair to the table. The chair rocked. One leg was shorter than the others by one thin coin. There was a coin already under it. The coin had teeth marks. I opened the book to the map and followed it to the pantry. The pantry door had 3 keyholes in a row under the knob. Someone had set them there on purpose. The brass plate around them was engraved with words in a faint hand. First key, we keep what you will not carry. Second key, we return what you lost if we can carry it. Third key, do not turn. A nail above the door held a ring heavy with iron. Each key had a tag tied with red thread. The tags were old, but the thread was new. Someone had replaced it not long ago. Someone expected me. I chose the key with a tag that said a name you should have said. I felt the words move under my thumb like a fish if a fish was made of thick paper. I set the ring on the table. I held the iron in both hands because iron likes to be held like that. I turned the first key in the first hole. The pantry did not open. The house opened. The air changed from my mouth to my feet. Warmth left by inches. Something like the smell of rain came into the hall, but the smell was inside the wood. The door breathed out a sound. Not a voice at first. A long shape of breath that had waited too long. Then words grew on that breath, the way frost grows on glass. They were my words. They were the words I should have said to my sister the day I left. They were the apology I did not make because I had a bus to catch. They were the sentence that starts with, I know, and includes I am sorry, and ends with, I am not leaving you to clean this up alone. I had not spoken those words aloud in years. The house had them, and it gave them back to me. It gave them back in my own voice. It made me listen like a person who has to sit for a test. When the sentence finished, the hinge moved with a thin click. The pantry door did not open yet. A second sound came out. This one was a reply. Not a reply I had heard in life. A reply I wanted. Her voice. My sister. Tired. Soft. Not forgiven exactly. Accepted. I stood very still, as if movement could break it. The pantry opened a finger width. I could see darkness, and the edge of a shelf lined with jars that were not jars. Not glass. Not water. Something held in a shape and moving slow. I shut the door with my body, because my hands were not my own. The door hold closed like a heartbeat under my shoulder. The iron in the key turned by itself that last quarter and gave a neat stop. The book lay open on the table to an older page. I do not remember turning it. The entry there said this: "First key will play what you owe yourself. Accept it without speaking if you want to keep it. If you speak during the playing, the house will keep the words you speak now and use them when it likes." I felt a shock of anger, so clean it made me smile. It is easy to be careful when you know the rule. It is not so easy when the rule hides. I put the key back on the ring and chose another. A tag read the laugh that never landed. Another read the thing you hoped was true. I did not choose those. I chose one that read 5 steps to go because it matched the entry in the book that had taken a breath and left blood. I turned the key in the second hole because the first hole tasted like a trap and I had already had breakfast. The second key turned like a slow door in thick air. The pantry opened a hand this time. The smell inside was not the smell of food. It was the smell of old rope and pencil shavings and breath that someone had kept in a jar too long and had only just let out. A footstep came down from the stairs, even though no one was on the stairs. Another came behind it. 5 of them came like a child, running. They stopped at the bottom riser with a little skidding sound that made my teeth hurt. The voice that came next did not come from the pantry. It came from the 12th step. I knew that without turning my head. It asked a question. How many times did you say you were fine when you were not? I kept my eyes on the pantry door. I kept my feet set. I answered with a number before my mouth could tell a story. 12. The step breathed out a threat of cold. It accepted my answer like an old clerk who has seen worse and has decided to be merciful one more day. The pantry showed me something then. A small thing. A hand on a railing. My sister's hand. Her ring was turned inward like a person does when she does not want the world to see that someone once tried to love her forever and did not do it. I did not cry because I have learned to save that for later. The pantry does not get that from me. It does not get to take what I choose to hold. I shut the door again. I turned the key back. The tag felt heavier, as if the paper had gone wet. The third keyhole looked like the mouth of a jar that had been filed smaller and smaller. The tag on the iron that fitted did not have words. It had a notch cut into the card. The notch was the shape of a window with ice on it. I did not turn the third key. I hung the ring back on the nail and stepped away. The hallway felt bright and thin. The tall clock at the end ticked once. The sound was just a little stronger than before. I could tell which side of the metal the tick had come from. I went to the closet under the stairs. On the inside of the door, someone had written with a carpenter's pencil. The graphite had been rubbed by fingers, but the words were still there. Say nothing after the second knock. The third knock is inside the house. I closed the closet and counted the steps again with my eyes. 12 with notches. 1 clean waiting place. The south room door stood a little open. A draft came out and moved the dust. The draft smelled like iron stoves and winter air and the sort of cold that comes from inside. I put my hand on the doorknob. It felt like a hand that had been cold for a very long time. I let go. In the kitchen the kettle clicked by itself. I had not set it to boil. Steam curled in the quiet like a thing that was learning to be alive. I said to the house that I understood the first rule about keys. You take a memory and you pay a memory. You ask a question and you pay with an answer. You turn the wrong key and the house will pick the right price. The house answered with the small breath sounds that old wood makes when it settles. Then the bell in the back room rang one time and stopped. It sounded more like a knock than before. I did not count. Counting makes 3 arrive faster. I sat at the table and wrote down what the first 2 keys had done. I wrote down my answer to the 12th step. I wrote down the way the pantry smelled and the way the voice from the door under the stairs asked. Notes make a fence. Fences make it possible to stand in a place and live. When I finished writing, I felt the house leaned closer. It did not touch me. It put its attention on the page and read my hand. Then it asked for its price in a way that was almost sweet. The clock ticked twice. The sound moved from almost to real. I owed the house to ticks. I owed it to small pieces of time. I put the tip of my finger on the face and held the second hand until it stuttered and stopped. Then I let go. It started again. I gave the house those 2 ticks because they were small. I did not want it to set its mouth for something larger. Chapter 3. The Stair That Counts. I tested the stairs at noon because noon is a human hour. Light from the front door reached 3 steps up before it turned thin. I put my foot on the first tread and said the number out loud. 1. The wood under my shoe made a sound like a person who almost answers a question and then decides to wait. The 12th notch in the bottom riser was deeper than the others. The pencil 12 over it had a little tail, as if the hand that wrote it had been shaking. The clean place where the 13th should be had a shine you get from being looked at. 2. The second tread creaked the way old treads do when they are telling the truth. 3. The third was quiet because it was lying. 4. A little breath of cool air went across my ankles. 5. My left knee clicked because it always clicks on 5th steps. The house paid attention to that. I reached the turn in the stairs where the wall has a shallow scar. The scar is the shape of a shoulder that could not help hitting the plaster while the person carrying it was looking back. The scar had been repainted 3 times. You can count the coats by the way the edges dry. 6. On 6, the house asked. The voice did not come from the stair. It came from the space under the stair. How many times did you pretend not to hear? The question was so small, it could have been a thought. That is how the house sets its trap. It speaks in a voice you can mistake for your own. I answered before the 7th step because the letter said to answer before the 12th. If you wait for better words, you pay with the words you did not use. I said 12 again because that felt true the way a bruise feels true. 7. On 7, the air in front of my face felt thicker, as if the house had put a curtain there and wanted me to push through it with my mouth closed. 8. On 8, I heard a small click behind me at the bottom of the stairs. That was the first tick the clock took as its price for my notes. The sound made me want to turn my head. I did not turn. Turning is how you fall in old houses. Old houses are built to make falling easy and forgiveness slow. 9. On 9, the south room door breathed out. The breath moved up the stairs, as if it wanted to come into my lungs. I kept my mouth a little open so I would not swallow the house by mistake. 10. On 10, the 12th tread spoke again, though I was not there yet. It asked a new question. Whose voice did you steal? I had an answer for that. It was my father's. He had a way of saying we will do this later that made later taste like winter. I learned to say it the same way. I answered out loud because the house prefers truth spoken like bread broken. 11. On 11, my phone buzzed in my pocket with no signal to make it do that. A text arrived from no number. The screen showed a single word sent 5 times. Listen. I put the phone back because gadgets like attention, and this house is jealous. 12. On 12, I stopped because the tread wanted me to. It felt like stepping on a name. The wood was softer there. There was a pressure in the center, like a thumb pushing up. The question came again, but softer, and with a little heat in it, like a sigh against a window. How many times did you pretend not to hear? I said 12 a third time, because sometimes repetition is offense. The house took that and did not ask for more. The clean place where the 13th tread should be waited. It wanted me. I stood with 1 foot on 12 and 1 foot in the air and counted the things that could go wrong. The list was long. The list felt like home. From the landing above came a sound like paper moving. Then a child's voice said, "I am here." The words were not loud. They were correctly sized to reach me and no further. That is how children speak when they want to be found by exactly one person. I did not know any children who belonged to this house. I knew one who belonged to me once. She did not live. The house did not know that yet, or it knew it and had been waiting to press that button. I spoke without looking up. "What is your name?" The voice answered with a name that could have been real. It could have been a name a neighbor gave a child. It could have been a name I might have chosen if choosing had been allowed to happen. It was not the name I keep folded in the bottom of a drawer under a scarf. I said, "I cannot help you until I reach the landing." I made my voice flat because flat voices are a kind of shield. The house considered. It pulled a draft across my shoes. It let the weight in my raised foot change, as if the air had become a step. It offered me a 13th tread made of nothing. I kept my foot in the air. I turned my head a little and looked through the gap in the railing at the lower hall. The tall clock had moved. It stood closer to the stairs by 1 inch. The space between its back and the wall was a new thin shadow. The house does not move furniture without asking. That is one of the rules I did not know until that minute. When it breaks its own rules, it means you have begun to break yours. The third knock sounded then, not from the door, from inside the house, from the south room. It came like knuckles on a headboard. It made the hair on my arms stand up because I have been in rooms where people die and boards keep the sound of knuckles for years. I did not look at the south room door. I looked at the place where the 13th step should be and said, "I am not late." The house did not like that. Late is a debt word here. Late is how you begin to owe and do not stop. The child voice on the landing said, "I am cold." It did not shiver. It did not cry. It presented a fact and waited for my response, as if we were at a counter in a shop. I said, "Go to the room with the blue wallpaper. Sit in the chair. Do not touch the window. I will bring a blanket that belongs to the living." The words I chose were careful. Blanket that belongs to the living. The house hears grammar like a dog hears a whistle. I stepped down from 12 back to 11. It felt like I had won a bet that I did not know the price of. I walked back to the bottom and counted the steps out loud again to keep the rhythm honest. 10, 9, 8. The house listened and did not correct me. At the foot of the stairs, I turned the face of the clock back to its old place by the wall. The clock let me do that without making a grand sound. It ticked twice in an even way. The hand moved past the mark where it had trembled the night before. In the kitchen, I found a blanket in a drawer that smelled clean. It had 3 blue stripes at one end. It looked like a blanket someone had taken care of because it had taken care of them. When I came back to the hall, the south room door was open 1 inch more than before. Cold lay on the floor like the shadow of water. I did not step in it. I carried the blanket to the room with the blue wallpaper and set it on the chair. The chair sighed like a person who has been asked to hold something for a moment and said yes because that is who they are. I did not see a child. I did not see the shape of a person at all. The room had a mirror, and in the mirror the chair did not hold a blanket. It held a folded absence, neatly squared. I put my hand on the folded absence and felt the weight of a sleeping cat. There was no cat in the room. That is how this house comforts you. It gives you the weight of things you wish you had. It waits for what you will pay to keep that weight. From the hall, the bell rang once. I carried the blanket back and folded it on the banister. I told the house I would make my own bargains and I would write them down. I told it I would not pay with my name and I would not pay with my breath. I told it, if it wanted a price, it could have the first 2 ticks I already gave and the sound of my father's whistle. which I can still hear, but do not need any more in order to stand up. The house took the whistle. I felt it leave my head like a bird that has waited too long on the back of a chair. I wanted it back at once, and I hated that I wanted it back. I stood still until the want went through me. The tall clock ticked again. The south room door breathed. The space where the 13th step should be shone like a clean tooth. I went to the table and opened the black book to a new page. I wrote 3 lines. The stairs asked questions from inside the wood. Answer before 12. Never stand on the step that is missing, even if the heir tries to become one. Then I wrote a 4th line. That was not a rule, but should have been. When a house learns your shape, it will try to wear you. Say no out loud. Say no like a person who expects to be believed. Chapter 4. The Room That Kept Winter. I decided to map the south room in daylight. The letter said do not sleep there. It did not say do not enter. Rules have edges. If you know the edge, you can lean on it without falling. I made a plan like a carpenter. I boiled the kettle and left it on a low simmer so the house could hear work. I tied the coil of twine from the kitchen nail around my wrist. I tied 3 square knots in it. 1 knot means I am here. 2 knots means I am going in. 3 knots means, pull me back if you can. There was no one to pull. Still, I tied the knots. Sometimes a ritual is a fence, even when it has no gate. I put a stick of chalk in my pocket. I put a small bell in the other pocket. The bell came from a box of Christmas things that did not belong to me, but had been left as if they were waiting for a call that never came. I set my phone to play a low recording of street sound from the last city I lived in. A minibus hooter, a woman laughing in a doorway, a dog that barked because none of the above belonged to him. I put the phone on the hall table. If the sound stopped, I would know the house had put its hand on my mouth. I stood at the south room door and did not say my name. I knocked once with the back of my fingers, because I wanted to be able to tell myself later that I had been polite. The closet under the stairs had a rule written inside. Say nothing after the 2nd knock. The 3rd knock is inside the house. I remembered the script. I would knock once, and no more. I would answer nothing that sounded like me. The door handle was iron. It had been cold 100 winters. The hinge sighed, as if it had rehearsed this many times, and was bored of pretending. Cold rolled out across my shoes, and up my shins like water that remembers being a river. My skin went to goose flesh, as if someone had blown across it hard. The room smelled like iron stoves, and wet wool, and the first minute after a window is opened on a morning when the world is white. It was not winter outside. It was winter here. The house had kept a season, and laid it in this room like a folded sheet. The wallpaper was blue and modest. Little vines, little birds. The pattern repeated in such a way that it made your eyes want to follow it to the corner and then get lost on purpose. A mirror over the fireplace showed the room in the same light, but the mirror breath fogged along the bottom edge, as if someone had stood there and spoken gently and left the words on the glass. The bed was made tight. The coverlet had a stitched border like teeth, resting. The pillow had a hollow in the center, the shape of a head that liked quiet. On the chest under the window lay a folded shawl with 3 blue stripes. It matched the blanket I had found. A tag on the shawl read winter, that came back. The tag was tied with red thread, the same thread from the key ring. The thread was new. I did not touch the shawl. I stood in the doorway and breathed through my mouth and counted the small muscles that jumped in my jaw. Counting was dangerous, but this was not a knock. This was a way to keep my blood from going somewhere it did not belong. The window had a latch with a keyhole. The keyhole was not made for any key that fits doors. It was narrow and long and set with a little flourish at the top, like a question that does not want an answer. Frost crawled from the brass into the glass in a fern that looked alive. It moved when I stared. Not much. Just enough to let me know that time here had a different way to count itself. I took the chalk out and marked the threshold. I drew a short line on the floorboard where my shoe would pass. I drew a line at my heel. Lines mean there is a before and an after, and the house must admit it. I stepped over. The line at my heel stayed white. The one at my toe went pale at once, as if sand had licked it. I said out loud what I was doing. I am entering to make an inventory. I will not sleep. I will not stay. I will not offer a name. I will not take a name. I will not open the window. I will not close my eyes. I will leave when the bell rings once. When you tell a house what you will do, you owe it the dignity of doing that. If you break your own list, the house will write its own, and you will not like the items it chooses. The room listened. The floor tightened under my boot. The wallpaper vines pressed themselves against the plaster, as if to hear better. A small crack in the corner made the noise a mouth makes when it says yes without the word. I went to the fireplace. Ash lay in the grate, the way ash lies when someone has pinned it down with a wish. Not scattered, not cold either, locked. In the ash a circle had been drawn with a finger, and then rubbed out, and then drawn again. Someone had tried to make the circle perfect, and had failed because circles done with hands fail. The failure made my throat tight. I want perfect circles when I am afraid. I do not get them. I looked into the mirror. In the mirror, the window showed winter. Snow fell in a quiet that had weight. The glass looked thick with it. It was not snowing outside the house. I kept my eyes on the reflection and spoke to the mirror like it was a person. "What did you keep here?" I said. "What did you keep too long?" The mirror offered the shape of a chair by the bed. The chair held a mended scarf and a book with no title. The title had been pressed out by hands. All the letters had gone to live somewhere else. There was a cup on the floor beside the chair. In the reflection, the cup steamed. On the table in the real room, the cup was a stain. The room wanted me to sit. It wanted me to leave a warm print. It wanted me to set down my weight so it could learn the shape of it. Weight is a signature here. The house collects them. I stood. I did not sit. The window knocked twice. Not loud. 2 taps the size of decision. It was the sound of a ring knocking against glass while a hand tries not to make noise. The first knock made the wallpaper birds turn their heads just a little. The second knock made the air take a breath and hold it. I did not answer. The third knock came from the inside of the room. It came from the bed frame. It came from the wood behind the headboard, as if knuckles were passing under the grain, the way a mouse passes under grass. The knock traveled across the bed, and down the leg, and into the floor, and arrived at my boot as a small hello against the leather. I said nothing. The closet rule had been clear. Say nothing after the second knock. The third knock is inside the house. The third knock had walked to my foot and was asking to be held. The temperature dropped with a tidy will. Breath fog showed in front of my mouth. Not much, enough to count. The frost fern on the window leaned toward the latch like a plant that has been thirsty for a century and has just smelled water. The keyring for the pantry hung heavy in my pocket. It pulled at the cloth toward the window, as if the labels on the keys wanted to be near the tag on the shawl. South room window, a winter that came back. Do not turn. The word do not is a blade that blunts fast if you use it to cut anything but yourself. I took the key ring out. I did not put a key in the keyhole. I held the ring in my open hand and let the cold curl its tongue around the iron. The tags stirred. The paper moved like fish under clear water. One tag rose, not the south room window tag, a different one. It read the breath you kept. The thread on it looked newer than the others. It pulled toward the latch like a small bird tugging a larger bird by its wing. I understood the offer. The room would trade. It would take the breath I saved in a jar I did not know I had, and give me back a winter I remembered and had lost. It would let me open a window that does not exist today and see a street that had been white once and hear the sound of my grandmother shaking a blanket at lights out so snow would not fall on the bed. It would put that night back in my mouth. All I had to do was fit the key and turn and lean forward, and put my face near the glass. I closed my hand. The iron bit my palm. Blood came quick because the cold had made the skin thin. The blood smelled like a nail. The room liked that smell. It pressed closer. I do not give blood to houses. That is one of my rules. If you let a house learn how you smell on the inside, it will not be able to stop itself. It will want more. It will work to earn it. It will be kind in a way that takes your legs out from under you. I took the bell out of my pocket and held it by the tongue so it would not ring yet. I looked at the mirror. In the mirror, the snow had thickened. A figure crossed the window outside. It went by slow. It did not leave footprints. It turned its head toward the glass, and that turned toward me. It had no face that I could fix in a shape. Only the idea of a face in a place where a face should be. The idea looked pleased. The idea looked like it had flown a long way and was about to land. I spoke in a voice the house would hear as work, not as prayer, not as fear. Work. I said, I am making an inventory. I see a bed. I see a chair. I see a cup stain that used to be steam. I see a window that keeps winter. I see a latch that asks. I do not turn the latch. I do not sit. I do not begin a circle. I cannot finish. The room did not like the word finish. The mirror fogged along the top edge. My name pressed there in my grandmother's hand. It was smaller than she would have written it for a school lunchbox. It was the size she used when she labeled jars in the cellar and did not want the mice to learn our business. I did not read my name out loud. Names are clever tools here. The house can use them, even when you think your mouth is shut. I backed to the threshold, with the bell still in my hand. I turned and set the bell on the floor just outside the line of chalk. I pulled the twine on my wrist until the knots touched my palm. I spoke to the hallway, as if the hallway were a person who believed in receipts. I am leaving the south room, I said. I counted 1 knock on the door, and 2 at the window, and 1 in the bed frame. I did not speak after the second. I did not open the window. I did not take the shawl. I did not sit. I did not offer a name or a breath. I am closing the door. I am taking the cold on my clothes with me. You can keep the rest. The door tried to close slow, as if it did not want to show me it cared. I let it do that. Pride is an animal in old houses. You do not have to hurt it. You only have to know when to step around it. When the latch seated, the bell rang once, as if someone had flicked it with a small fingernail. The tone was thin and bright and quick. The sound went down the hallway and up the stairs and into the clock case. The clock answered a second later with a tick that sounded satisfied. The phone on the hall table kept playing the city, the minibus hooter, the laugh, the dog who wanted the last word. They were all still there. I was still here. I stood with my forehead against the paint for a minute and let my breath slow, and then I went back into the room for one thing only. I took the chalk and I wrote on the inside of the door at the height of a hand that would reach without thinking. Do not turn, do not sit, do not count snow. The chalk left a bright bone line. The cold ate that line at the edges, but it could not eat the middle. I went to the kitchen and made tea. I did not want. My hands shook when I put the cup down and the saucer chattered. The house listened to the chatter and did not ask for a price. That was a gift. Houses do not give many gifts. When they do, you do not clap. You nod once and put the gift on a shelf where you can see it until you need it. I opened the black book and wrote what the room had shown me. I wrote spare because spare writing travels better and I might have to carry it fast. South room keeps winter. Window has a latch that asks. Tag reads winter that came back. Do not turn. Third knock walked through the bed. Do not speak after the second. Room will offer trade. It will offer a winter the body wants. Price will be a breath you kept. Do not pay with breath. Do not pay with name. Do not sit. Do not count snow. When I lifted my pen, the paper had gone cold under my hand. My palm stuck for a second like a cup set on a wet table. The book took a little heat from me and closed its own cover. The leather strap swung into place. The bell on the floor gave one small note with no hand on it. I stood and took off my sweater. I held it to my face. I waited for the smell of cold to rise from the wool. It did not. The room had taken that from me. It had taken the smell of cold and cloth. A low price in a place like this. Small enough that I did not notice until I asked for it. Small enough that I could live without it. Small enough that the house learned the size of what I would give to keep standing. I wrote one more line. The house keeps winter in a room and will put it in your hands if you ask. Do not ask. Winter is heavier here than it looks. It will put your name in the glass and call you to read it. If you read it, you will be late forever. Chapter 5. The ledger turns itself. The black book did not wait for me to open it. When I came to the table, it was already spread wide. The strap hung like a dead tongue. The pages were no longer in order. They turned by themselves, not fast. One by one, like a person who wants you to watch every single trick. The handwriting changed. It was mine now. My letters, my hesitations. Sentences I had never written, but could see were mine. The ink was still wet. My pen lay beside the book. I had not touched it. The page said this: "You will speak your name on the threshold. You will knock 3 times. You will sleep in the south room. You will stand on the 13th step and answer nothing. You will open the winter window and breathe. You will pay with your father's whistle, your sister's ring, and your own last laugh. You will belong." The house was not recording rules anymore. It was writing a prophecy. I slammed the book shut. The leather strap buckled itself with a neat click. The tall clock ticked 12 times at once and then stopped. The hands did not move. The bell at the back rang once. The south room door creaked wider. The stairs sighed. Every part of the house smiled at the same time. Chapter 6. The House That Wears You. The curve came fast. The house had been teaching me rules, but rules were only a costume. The real trick was this. It wanted me to be the next costume. The mirror in the south room showed me standing at the top of the stairs, even though I was in the hall. It showed me opening the window even though my hands were still at my sides. It showed me stepping out into snow that was not falling here. I touched my face. The mirror version touched back a second later. The delay was the lie. I called out, not to the house, to the ledger. "If you can write me, then you can erase me," I said. The book answered by opening again. The page turned blank. My name bled across it, letter by letter. Then the name blurred, stretched, split into 2 names, 3 names, 20 names. Every person who had ever stood in Greywater House was pouring into me. The house did not want a tenant. It wanted a host body. I felt my throat close. Breath came slow, like someone else was taking turns with me. The stairs groaned. The 12th tread rose like a chest. It asked one question, in a voice made of every voice at once. "How many are you?" If I answered with 1, it would take me. If I answered with 2, it would split me. If I answered with nothing, the prophecy would write itself. The south room waited. The winter window glowed. The 13th step opened like a mouth. I took the chalk and wrote on my arm. Not 1, not 2, not yours. I held my arm up. I showed the house the words. I shouted them so hard, my throat burned raw. The house howled back. Windows rattled. The south door slammed. The bell rang 3 times like a laugh. The ledger burst into flame without heat. Pages turned to ash, and the ash wrote itself on the walls. The prophecy tried to crawl across the plaster. Chapter 7. The Price That Ends the Debt. Everything in me said run. Everything in me also said if I left now, the house would follow. It would wear me from a distance. It would take my shadow first, and then my laugh, and then my name. And I would walk through the world, while Greywater House lived in me like a second spine. I went to the pantry. I took the key with the tag that read 5 steps to go. I took the one that read winter that came back. I took the one that read the breath you kept. I held them in my hand until the iron cut me. Blood slicked, the tags redder than their threads. The pantry door opened on a roar of cold. Shelves of jars. Shelves of kept breaths. All of them hummed at once. Every jar was a throat. Every throat was a debt. I smashed them. Glass broke. Water spilled. Air rushed out like a choir that had been gagged too long. The voices filled the house. They shook the clock. They tore the vines off the wallpaper. They broke the mirror. They stormed up the stairs and down the hall and into the south room and out the winter window. They fled like birds at last released. The house screamed. It had never lost its debts before. It clawed at me with drafts. It slammed doors. It rang the bell until the rope snapped. The 13th step opened into a black that had teeth. I threw the last key into it, and the black swallowed its own mouth. The house shook. The roof split. Plaster rained. The tall clock fell forward and struck the floor. For 1 second time broke open, and I saw everything it had kept. My grandmother, my father. Children who never grew old. Faces that wanted to stay, and faces that wanted to run. They all poured out like water, leaving a broken jar. When the shaking stopped, the house was hollow. Greywater House was only walls and boards and nails again. No hum, no voice. The prophecy burned itself out. I stood in the dust and told the silence what I had done. I broke your jars. I broke your debt. I am not your costume. I am not your host. I am not your name. The silence answered with nothing. The nothing was clean. It was the first honest silence I had heard here. I stepped outside. Fog clung to the road, but it did not move like breath. It was only weather. My tracks stayed in the gravel this time. The house behind me sagged as if tired. The windows no longer watched. The door no longer knew my name. I walked away. I did not look back. I kept my own name in my mouth like a warm stone. I said it once to myself to be sure. It sounded right. It sounded mine. Greywater House had waited for me. Now it would wait for someone else. But it would wait empty, without its jars, without its rules, without its debts. And I hoped, as I turned the bend in the road, that when the next name came, it would not answer, because I had learned the truth. Sometimes the scariest thing in a house is not the ghosts it keeps. It is the part of you that almost wants to stay.